A big house needs a big lot of land. In Genesis 15, in a covenant moment between the Creator and Abraham, 18 through 20, it said, "On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, Cadmonites, the Hittites, Perizzites, the Rephites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and Jebusites." So he's marking out territory that he's promising that these other clans are currently inhabiting at that time. In Jubilees 8:12, we get another description of that same territory, but a little bit broader. And this was the land that came forth to Shem after Noah and his 3 boys got off the boat. So here in Jubilees chapter 8, verse 12, it says, "And there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth." And no, guys, this isn't Lord of the Rings Middle Earth. This is just the middle portion of the earth. We're actually going to have some maps we'll go over here in just a few minutes. "So there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons for the generations of eternity." I want to draw a quick point of notice here for everyone that the inheritance, it says that this is a piece of land that is his inheritance. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's going to be touched upon further as we go. "From the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water from the river Tina, and his portion goes towards the west through the midst of this river. And it extends till it reaches the water of the abysses, out of which this river goes forth and pours its water into the sea Miat. And this river flows into the Great Sea." Okay, so it's interesting descriptions. We're going to look at it on a map here in just a little bit. Further down in the chapter, Jubilees 8:14 through 15, it continues to expound and explain about this portion that came to Shem. "And his portion extends along the Great Sea, and it extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue which looks towards the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian Sea. And it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the Great Sea, on the shores of its waters, and it extends to the west of Afra, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the river Gihon, and to the banks of the waters of Gihon," to the banks of this river. Verse 16, 17, "It extends towards the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden, to the south thereof, to the south and from the east of the whole land of Eden, and of the whole east it turns to the east and proceeds until it reaches the east and the mountain named Rapha, and it descends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. This portion came forth by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever, unto his generations forevermore." So we got furthering descriptions now in 18 and 19. It says that Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem and for his sons. And he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in prophecy, for he had said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem." Now, real quick, guys, I just want to point out here, these are not just throwaway words. Noah, in his blessing, in a blessing of prophecy, says that the Lord blesses Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem. Okay? So the land that was given to Shem, in a prophetic prayer, Noah is speaking out, may God live, may him dwell in the dwelling of Shem. All right? And then he goes on to say, and he knew, meaning Yahweh, knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies, or she mentioned Noah. Noah knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies, and that the dwelling of the Lord and Mount Sinai is the center of the desert, and Mount Zion is the center of the navel of the earth. These 3 were created as holy places facing each other. So Noah already knew that the Garden of Eden was considered the Holy of Holies. For everyone watching along, if you're not familiar with the Holy of Holies, it was the inner shrine room of the tabernacle of God. So in the structure that was supposed to be the place where a priest would come forward to the quote-unquote place where Yahweh puts his feet, right, the place of his name and authority, the priest would come forward and offer on the specific altar of sacrifice. They would alter the offerings of the people for atonement of sins, for thanksgiving, for rejoicing, for celebrations, for vows, for a variety of reasons as listed out in Leviticus 1 through 7. And that was in the outer courtyard where the bronze altar was, but then there was the tent of meeting, so to speak, right? So within the overall structure of the temple, there was another inner place, right, that was more holy, more set apart. And inside that room, there was another closed off little room that was considered the shrine room, or the empty room that was a placeholder for the Ark of the Covenant, which was the seat, the mercy seat, the actual throne of Yahweh. And this was in all these things were patterned and made after the one that's already in heaven. So that's what Moses had made, and this is what, the general idea of there's a temple in heaven. There's Enoch talks about it in his writings. We're going to talk about some of Enoch, first Enoch here towards the end. And then Jubilees tells us that Noah had the books of his father going back to Enoch. Obviously, Noah lived before the flood, so he would have known the writings of Enoch, passed down through Methuselah. So he already understood and knew the layout of a heavenly temple, and he knew that the Garden of Eden, that area was going to be the Holy of Holies, which means that room, which is supposed to have the Ark of the Covenant, and the Father sits there. We see in Ezekiel 43:14 that both Father and Son, there's two different holy seats right there for two people. It's very interesting. But that room was empty in the replica they built on the earth. It was empty because God's still in heaven, right? He's still above. So there was an angel that hovered over the Ark of the Covenant, but never actually sat down on it. There was an angel that went with them called the Angel of the Presence that Yahweh sent to go with them and guide them, protect them, and also help them govern and oversee what they were doing as they were practicing the priesthood with the tabernacle and the sacrifices. But he never actually sat down on the throne as if he was Yahweh. He was a placeholder. He was kind of a babysitter, if you will. The Holy of Holies, that portioned area within those structures that was empty, just with an empty throne room, is going to be where the Garden of Eden is. That's going to be, this is what we're going to read later, where the Revelation 21 in the New Jerusalem, that place is no longer going to be empty whenever he dwells in the dwelling of Shem on the earth, in this land that we're going to go over that is a portion to Shem and the territory boundaries of it. So I'll keep going here. And he knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies and the dwelling of the Lord, and Mount Sinai, the center of the desert, and Mount Zion is the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as holy places facing each other. Jubilees 8:21, and Noah knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons unto the generations forever. The whole land of Eden, the whole land of the Red Sea, the whole land of the east and India, and on the Red Sea and the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Caphtor, and all the mountains of Sinir and Ammana. All right. We're going to go over all those things that are being described. And here, as you can see on screen, this is a big overview. The Middle East stretching into the Asian and African continents. On the top left, of course, is the European continent. And here is this bigger portion stretching all the way to the ancient borders of India, over to the River Nile, up to past the lands of the islands of Caphtor that we just saw described. And towards the top of that arrow would be the top of the Euphrates, where we'd have the, furthering mountains that were being described as well. So he received a big portion of land. In Jubilees 8:30, it says, "And the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is a blended cold and heat." And we understand that because of the temperate climate, because of its location, right? Underneath the circumference of the heavenly luminary, the sun that circles overhead. In Jubilees 19, we see in 16 and 17, Abraham saw the deeds of Esau, and he knew that in Jacob should his name and seed be called. He called Rebekah and gave commandment regarding Jacob, for he knew that she too loved Jacob much more than Esau. And he said to her, "My daughter, watch over my son, Jacob, for he shall be in my stead on the earth, and for a blessing in the midst of the children of men, and for the glory of the whole seed of Shem." So just as we talked about a few minutes ago, we got Noah, whose son was Shem. They drew lots for which portions, after they get off the boat, the three sons and also their grandsons that were there, in the presence of Noah and an actual angel. You have to go back and read the fullness of Jubilees 8 through 10. You see that there's this unique moment, and it doesn't tell you the timeline of when this moment happens. From my understanding, from what we read and what we're going to continue to expound upon, it seems as if, because it mentioned Babel in there, in that it seems as if this was at the latter years of Noah's life. Remember, Noah lived 950 years. 350 of those years were after the flood. So he had lots of kids and grandkids. And they go through this moment where the first generation kids, Noah, Ham, and Japheth, they get, The first generation of Noah's kids, which would be Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they received the bigger these big portions, and then within those portions, all the grandkids got theirs divided up. And I'm thinking, from my putting together these events and the lifespan of Noah and Shem, that this happened toward the end of Noah's life, which would have already had the land of Babel established, which means the land of confusion, which means there was already in the presence or in the time period of the Tower of Babel or just after it. And they divided all the land up so they could know where people could disperse to. And here in this moment, we have Noah speaking to Shem, saying he's getting a blessed portion of this land. And then we go down to Jubilees 19, and we see that Abraham, who's a descendant of Shem, is speaking to Rebekah, his daughter-in-law, about his grandson Jacob. And he's saying, I've noticed Jacob is supposed to take over me, my priesthood, my position on the earth as a priest and prophet. He's the one that he has the heart, and he's showing the propensity to learn the ways of Yahweh. And he will be for the glory of the whole seed of Shem. So he's tying this blessing directly back to Shem. Okay? Jubilees 19, 8 through 20, he goes on to tell her, for I know that the Lord will choose him to be a people for possession unto himself, above all peoples that are upon the face of the earth. And behold, Isaac, my son, loves Esau more than Jacob, but I see that you truly love Jacob. And still further to your kindness to him, and let your eyes be upon him in love. For he shall be a blessing unto us on the earth from now unto all generations of the earth. Let your hands be strong, and let your heart rejoice in your son Jacob. For I have loved him far beyond all my sons. He shall be blessed forever, and his seed shall fill the whole earth. If a man can number the sand of the earth, his seed also shall be numbered. And all the blessings wherewith the Lord has blessed me and my seed shall belong to Jacob and his seed always. So you guys catch that? All the blessings. What did we read at the very beginning? Jubilees 15. Abraham made a covenant with Yahweh, and he said, I will give you these territories. I'll give you these lands. It's part of this covenant. That's part of his blessing. The same, and he's praying for Jacob to receive the same blessing he received for the glory of Shem. See how this is tying back in this lineage to faithful men of Yahweh, receiving the same covenant promises. All the blessings wherewith the Lord has blessed Abraham are going to pass now to Jacob. Abraham received all the blessings wherewith he was blessed, coming down from Adam to Canaan, to Jared, to Mahalalel, to Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Noah, Shem. You see that? It's one covenant, one law, one inheritance. He goes on in Jubilees 19, 24 through 26. And in his seed shall my name be blessed, and the name of my fathers, Shem and Noah and Enoch and Mahalalel and Enos and Seth and Adam. And these shall serve to lay the foundations of the heaven, and to strengthen the earth, and to renew all the luminaries which are in the firmament. And he called Jacob before the eyes of Rebekah his mother, and kissed him, and blessed him. And he said to Jacob, Jacob, my beloved son, whom my soul loves, may God bless you from above the firmament. From where? From above the firmament. That's where the blessings come down to us, from above the firmament. He goes on to say, and may he give you all the blessings wherewith he blessed Adam and Enoch and Noah and Shem. And all the things of which he told me, and all the things which he promised to give me, may he cause to cleave to you and to your seed forever, according to the days of heaven above the earth. So there he's tying it all together. The same blessings to all these guys back, all the way back to Adam, that were promised to me, I want to give to you. And I want to make sure that you understand Yahweh wants to give these to you too. He's going to bless you. And he's going to promise you and establish his covenant with you, just like he did with me, all the way back to Adam and all the other patriarchs. And this is going to happen according to the days of heaven above the earth. It's an interesting phrase, isn't it, guys? This is because heaven uses the same calendar as we do. They have the same type of days. This is not a double standard of timekeeping. Heaven uses the same type of days that we do. They also use the same measurements as men. And we're going to talk about that in Revelation 21. So as we looked at this portion that was given to Shem from Yahweh, We can see it stretches over this large piece of the earth. This is what was considered the middle of the earth. I think that's very interesting. If we zoom in, we can start to see some of the borders that it extends to. And this is a modern day map showing us the actual river Euphrates. It's in the blue right there, and how it extends up to the river Murat up in Turkey and branches off into two different tributaries, two different rivers. But the river Euphrates was one of the, I should say, the northeastern boundary line for what was promised to Abraham. So he was promised from the Nile to the Euphrates. Well, this particular promise of inherited land just so happens to fit inside the greater portion that was given to Shem. That's wonderful, right? So even though for practicality in the days of Shem may have been given a much, much larger portion for his kids to go out and spread out. That's fine. But within that larger portion, as Noah says, he knew that the Holy of Holies, Mount Zion, and Mount Sinai were inside that portion. I should say he knew the Garden of Eden, where it used to be before it was retracted before the flood, as well as Mount Sinai and Mount Zion. He knew that they were inside that region that was promised to Shem. He considered it a blessed portion. Abraham gets promised a portion of land inside of Shem's portion. Makes sense since he's a descendant of Shem. And it also has Mount Zion, Mount Sinai, and the former location of the Garden of Eden, which will be the future location of the Garden of Eden. So this is Abraham's portion from Yahweh that fits perfectly right inside of Shem's portion. And if we actually look, because we're going to talk about the dimensions of the New Jerusalem that comes down to the ground. And if we look at as the crow flies, is what is an old saying, right? Meaning that you're not going through the roads because that can add a lot of mileage to your trip. But if you were just in the air flying from one city to the next, how much actual distance is it? So if you look from the Nile to the Euphrates, it's like 941 miles. So I thought, okay, that's not 1,500 miles, or that's not even 1,380 miles, we're going to go over all the calculations here in a minute. But I thought, all right, what about the southern tip of the Nile, which is in Aswan, Egypt, over to Turkey, which is in this place called Diyarbakir in Turkey, which is where the top of the Euphrates River branches off into the river Murat. I thought, all right, well, let's take the extreme boundaries of these two, and it still is only 1,049 miles. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. But what happens if I put something that's 1,380 miles, approximately 1,400 miles squared in this boundary? Will it still cover this boundary and still be inside the portions of Shem as well? So then I thought, all right, what's another city that could possibly be in the portions, but then is in a straight line, since we know the city of the New Jerusalem is 4 square, as Revelation 21 tells us. So I looked and I found that Dubai is literally just on the edge of 1,400 miles in straight distance as the crows fly from the base of the Nile over to the other extenuating border to Dubai. Thought that was interesting. Now in Revelation 21, 15 through 17, it says, the angel who spoke with me had a golden measuring rod to measure the city and its gates. The city lies 4 square, with its width, and the same is its length. And he measured the city with a rod, and all its dimensions were equal, 12,000 stadia in length and width and height. He measured its walls to be 144 cubits, by the human measure the angel was using. So it tells you right here, the angel's using human measurements, not any strange heavenly measurements that we aren't familiar with. And this word stadia, an ancient Middle Eastern term for lengths and measures, which can be translated to both kilometers and miles. If we look at 12,000 stadia, it translates to 1,379.44 miles. So I know that a lot of times when I'm speaking quickly about the New Jerusalem, we've mentioned in other videos, we talk about being 1,500 miles squared. But technically, when you look at all the manuscripts and you go through, it's more like 1,400 miles squared, specifically, 1,380 to 1,379. And so I thought this was interesting because you can convert the ancient measurements of stadia to both kilometers and to miles, and it works out to be 1,379, which is That distance from the Nile to where the Euphrates turns into the Persian Gulf, which opens into the sea. And that was the descriptions given to Shem. His portion, where this river extended out and then dumped into another place, which dumped into the sea. Thought that was interesting. It's exactly 1,400 miles, give or take. Depends on where you start your measurements. Within Dubai, I suppose. Dubai is a massive city. It's interesting that they built it right there. Right there. So let's keep going here. Keep looking at some of this. So we can see now that if we have inside Shem's portion in the red, encompassing Abraham's portion promised in Genesis 15 and 22 in the light green, we put this yellow box around it to see that this is the 1,400 square miles of the New Jerusalem, from the Nile to the mouth of the Euphrates. And it fits perfectly. It even covers, on the top left, it even covers the islands of Kaftor, all the way up above Lebanon, as was explained in Jubilees chapter 8 as a portion given to Shem. It's pretty interesting. So a lot of you might be thinking, well, how does this work, Sean? Because look at all that Mediterranean Sea around the island of Kaftor. Look at all that, the sea of the Nile down below at the bottom portion of it. I mean, that's a bunch of water. What's going to happen? You guys remember how we talked in chapter 2 of this series, Destroyed World? Valleys are going to be shaken with the massive earthquake, mountains will be shaking in their valleys with the massive earthquake, and the valleys will be raising up. It's going to level out the land. The only reason there's water there is because there's a depression in the topography of the land. So therefore the water fills it, because we don't live on a ball. We live on a flat stationary plane covered by a firmament. So once that land is raised up, the water recedes. This whole area is made as a flat foundation for this massive land, heavenly country, a heaven-sized city that's descending through the firmament as the inheritance of the saints to bring peace on the earth.